Night spread its deep blue veil over the quiet hillside, leaving only the faint outline of ivy-tangled towers and old spires against the star-laced sky. Somewhere among those slopes stood a secluded stone manor, more library than home, where a single candle glimmered in an upstairs window. In that solitary room, a young man named Kalen pored over brittle parchment, his eyes weary yet determined. At 21, he had spent the last 3 years assisting a reclusive scholar named Master Sedwin, whose eccentricities ranged from refusing most visitors to devoting entire days to dissecting obscure arcane texts. Kalen saw these habits up close, transcribing notes late into the night, always with a quill in hand and a mild ache in his back from crouching over ancient scrolls. Bookshelves lined every wall in Master Sedwin's cramped study, towering so high that spidery ladders were needed to reach the uppermost shelves. Tomes hailing from forgotten lands coexisted with thick handmade journals stuffed with pressed flowers. On the cluttered floor lay crates of artifacts, shards of pottery, rusted swords, cryptic amulets whose meanings remained stubbornly hidden. For Kalen, it was both exhilarating and exhausting. He yearned for something beyond dusty pages and unending transcriptions, but he had made a promise to learn all he could under Master Sedwin's tutelage. Some days, that promise felt like a binding chain. Other days, it seemed like his best opportunity to see beyond the horizon of their small rural community. That night, fatigue weighed on Kalen's eyelids. He rubbed at them, shifting position to ease the stiffness in his shoulders. Somewhere downstairs, the grandfather clock droned a deep gong, announcing midnight. Kalen took it as a cue to tidy the desk and slip away before Master Sedwin insisted on starting a new project. The old scholar's restlessness was legendary. Nights and days blurred together as he chased the faintest whiff of an ancient puzzle. Kalen pushed back from the desk and crept out of the study, footsteps soft along the hall. Most of the mansion's interior was hushed, lit only by taper candles placed at intervals too widely spaced to brighten the corridors. The hush deepened when he went downstairs, passing a tall window from which he spotted moonlight glinting off the orchard's dew-slick grass. Sighing, he made his way into a narrower hallway he rarely visited. It led to the mansion's older storage rooms, a sprawling labyrinth from centuries past. He had no particular reason to go there, only that an odd compulsion tugged at him to explore. Each step echoed. The corridor smelled of old cedar and faint candle wax. As he reached the end, he paused at a door he had never opened. It was propped ajar by a wedge of stone. Carefully, Kalen pressed a palm against it and eased his way in. Beyond lay a single rectangular room filled with musty crates stacked haphazardly. This was storage for artifacts Master Sedwin had deemed less pressing, either because they lacked immediate interest or were too puzzling to classify. Near one corner, a cobweb-strewn trunk sat slightly apart, its lid unlatched. Kalen's eyes lingered there, drawn by what seemed to be a glimmer of silver. He took a cautious step forward, lifting the trunk's lid further. A waft of stale air hit him, but inside he saw, quite unexpectedly, folded garments. The fabric shimmered oddly, as though woven with threads that captured moonlight and refracted it in pastel hues. Most striking of all was a slender silver chain lying coiled on top of the garments like a sleeping serpent. At its center hung a single pendant shaped like a crescent petal, faintly luminous in the gloom. An amulet? He wondered. Why would women's clothing and jewelry be stashed in a corner crate? The question echoed in his mind, but the answer did not come. Instead, his curiosity surged. He reached in and lifted a piece of clothing out, a tunic of fine silk, cut in a feminine style he had rarely seen. The material felt impossibly smooth between his fingers. There was something about it, something intangible that called to him, much like the entire trunk had beckoned him inside this room. He swallowed, realizing how odd it was to be standing here, transfixed by a stranger's clothing. With a glance over his shoulder to confirm he was alone, Kaelin gingerly placed the tunic aside and picked up the pendant by its chain. In the faint candlelight, the little crescent glowed with a soft, pearlescent sheen. A ripple of energy, half thrill and half trepidation, spread through him. Could this be magic? True magic, not just the old illusions Master Sedwin loved to catalogue? Maybe it was foolish, but he slipped the pendant around his neck. The amulet settled against his chest, cool against his skin. A subtle hum reverberated through his bones, so quiet he wondered if he was imagining it. The trunk still lay open, garments folded neatly within. He set the amulet down on his chest, hesitated, and then traced his fingertips over the shimmering tunic again. He looked around once more, making sure no one hovered nearby. The mansion was as silent as the grave. Kaelin couldn't quite articulate why he wanted to do this, but his heart pounded as he lifted the tunic and let it slip over his head. It was meant for a smaller frame, and yet, strangely, it fit as though it had been tailored precisely for him. A sudden prickling sensation traveled over his limbs. His fingers felt cold, and his vision flickered for half a heartbeat. Alarmed, he tried to steady himself against the trunk, but in that instant, his entire body shifted. He felt himself change. Lightness rushed through his bones and muscles. His torso tightened, limbs subtly rearranged, and his hair swished around his shoulders in an unfamiliar length. Gasping, Kaelin looked down. Where he expected to see his usual form, he saw a very different shape. A woman's shape. His waist curved inward, and his thighs, now accentuated under the tunic's smooth fabric, felt unsettlingly new. Even his hands were more slender, with tapered fingers. A wave of disbelief crashed over him. He stumbled back a step, scanning his reflection in a dust-laced mirror propped against a crate. The figure staring back was a young woman, about his height, her face bearing enough similarity to recall his own features, yet re-envisioned with softer lines. Her hair was a tawny brown, her eyes a hint larger and more luminous. His breath caught. He touched his cheek, and the mirror woman did the same, her expression mirroring his shock. This was impossible, he thought. Impossible, yet real. The pendant's glow had brightened, as though it fed on the transformation. Could it be connected to these clothes? Some arcane synergy between the tunic and the moon-petal amulet? Kaelin's heart hammered in his chest. Or was it her chest now? Every sensation felt magnified. Her skin prickled from the cool air, and the new shape of her body felt both frightening and oddly comforting at the same time. After a moment, panic hissed in the back of her mind. Was this transformation permanent? She had no idea how the magic worked. Pulse thrumming, she fumbled with the amulet's chain. The clasp stuck. Her cheeks burned with anxiety. Finally, she managed to unclasp it, and the silver chain slipped away. In an instant, the same surreal ripple passed over her, and her body rearranged itself again. She caught her breath, looking down. The tunic hung loosely off a male frame once more. He was back to Kaelin, the version of Kaelin he had always known. Hands shaking, he peeled the tunic off. There was no mistake. Those garments were enchanted, and the amulet somehow activated the spell. A rush of conflicting emotions filled him. Relief that he could return to normal, fear of what had just happened, and an inexplicable desire to experience it again. At last, Kaelin carefully refolded the tunic, placed it back in the trunk, and laid the amulet on top. He shut the trunk's lid, his thoughts pounding too loudly to let him linger. That night, he didn't sleep. He lay awake in his tiny bedroom, the candle guttering on a side table as he replayed what had occurred. The memory of seeing that female reflection in the dusty mirror haunted him. It was so vivid, so real. Eventually, exhaustion dragged him under, but even in slumber, he dreamt of glimmering garments and a shape-shifting pendant that hummed with hidden power. The next morning, Kaelin stumbled into Master Sedwin's study late, eyes ringed with shadows. The old scholar frowned in disapproval. "Overslept, did we?" He tapped the chronicle on his desk, its pages covered in spidery script. "The next portion awaits your transcription. Time is precious, my boy." Kaelin rubbed the back of his neck. "Yes, Master Sedwin. Apologies." He cast a glance at the older man's stern face, but Sedwin looked more concerned than angry. Kaelin nodded in acknowledgement and seated himself at the writing desk, pulling the thick tome toward him. Fine motes of dust floated in the sunny air, and the scratch of his quill began to fill the silence. All the while, his mind drifted back to the memory of last night's discovery. Every so often, Master Sedwin would break the hush with a grumble or a small exclamation about the text he was reading, but Kaelin only half heard him. The trunk, the garments, the amulet. By late afternoon, Kaelin needed a reprieve from the endless transcription. He stood, stretching his stiff muscles, and mustered his courage. "Master Sedwin," he began, voice hesitant, "have you encountered any magical attire in your studies? I mean clothing with truly significant enchantments, not just illusions." Sedwin's gaze flicked to him with keen interest. "Magical attire?" He rubbed at his beard. "It has been known to exist, but it's quite rare. Usually found in old narratives, connected to myths about transformation or illusions of grandeur." "Why do you ask?" Kaelin shrugged as casually as he could. "I came across an anecdote last night while reading. It piqued my curiosity." The old scholar's eyes narrowed, but after a thoughtful pause he nodded. "It's possible. Most surviving enchanted textiles come from cryptic sources. For instance, there are stories about dresses that let the wearer slip into the spirit realm, or cloaks that grant invisibility. But transformation garments? Those are less common. They do exist in certain legends, mind you, though I suspect most are tall tales." Kaelin swallowed. The flutter in his stomach refused to subside. He bowed his head in thanks and drifted back to his work. Even Sedwin's incomplete knowledge was enough to confirm that transformations of this sort, if they truly happened, were extremely rare. Yet Kaelin had experienced it firsthand. He had worn that feminine form like a second skin. That evening he returned to the trunk, this time with a lamp in hand. Just as before, it sat waiting in the dim, dust-laden storage room. He inhaled, remembering how his reflection had looked. Then, in a moment of impulsive desire, he opened the lid again, lifting out the same tunic and the silver chain. He hesitated only a moment longer before slipping on the amulet and then the tunic. The transformation was less shocking the second time, though no less awe-inspiring. The gentle shift of bone and muscle, the swirling lightness in his gut, the prickle along his spine, these sensations bloomed as his figure altered. Soon, Kaelin found herself standing there in the mirror's reflection. She bit her lip. Some part of her was anxious, even frightened, but another part of her felt surprisingly at ease, as though wearing this new shape offered perspectives the old one never could. She lingered in that form, gently running her hands over the silk garment. Each stroke reminded her how real this was. Her mind whirled with questions. Did the trunk hold more items of similarly potent magic? Did they all cause transformations, or something else entirely? Returning to her original shape demanded that she remove both the pendant and the garment. If she took off the amulet but left the tunic on, the transformation would waver, then fade. If she took off the tunic but kept the amulet, her body would revert as well. Both had to remain together for the magic to persist. It was an odd rule, but consistent. Perhaps that was the key to unlocking this enchantment's origin. Days slid by, and Kaelin lived a kind of double life. By day, he was Master Sedwin's dutiful apprentice, carting scrolls from the library, fetching potions from the local apothecary, and preparing texts for transcription. By night, he stole away to the corner room, rummaging through the trunk for more garments and quietly experimenting with them, always ensuring to remove them before returning to his bedchamber. Within that trunk, he found a small array of beautiful outfits, each embroidered with subtle glowing threads. Some were elaborate gowns, others were more modest garments. All triggered the transformation when paired with the amulet. Night after night, Kaelin spent hours trying out different outfits. He discovered that although each piece changed him into a female version of himself, the cut and style of the garment influenced how comfortable that form felt. Certain dresses made it easier to move gracefully, while others restricted movement with too many heavy layers. He found that a simple knee-length tunic was the easiest to don and remove. Within that shape, he could pace about, practicing speech in a slightly higher voice. She even tried small steps in the corridor when no one was around, footsteps hushed by the thick rugs. Though enthralled, Kaelin also felt guilty. He had never asked Master Sedwin for permission to snoop through artifacts. What if the scholar discovered the trunk's contents missing or disturbed? Moreover, Kaelin worried about what others would say if they discovered him cross-dressing and shape-changing in secret. The mansion was large, but rumors traveled quickly among the staff in the kitchen or stable. He kept his nightly excursions quiet, almost painfully so. An accidental near exposure occurred 2 weeks into Kaelin's experiments. One late evening, while returning from the trunk to his room as Kaelin, in a long robe that was a touch too big, he almost ran straight into Master Sedwin in the hallway. Her heart pounding, she dodged into a side passage, barely escaping the scholar's notice. She pressed herself against the wall, breath shuddering, hearing the slow tread of Sedwin's steps fade into the distance. After that, she decided to be more careful. Yet the yearning to revisit that alternate form refused to fade. Sometimes Kaelin found reasons to slip out to the trunk even in the daytime, when Master Sedwin was napping or engrossed in his own research. When Kaelin encountered the smooth line of her reflection, she experienced an indescribable mixture of apprehension, fascination, and a subtle warmth that glowed in her chest. Outside that hidden chamber, life continued. Once a week, Kaelin journeyed to the village to pick up supplies and deliver messages on behalf of Master Sedwin. These errands always took him past the home of the local healer, Lyra. She was in her mid-20s, known not just for her skill in healing tinctures, but for her gentle warmth and quick wit. Her hair was dark, her eyes bright, and she had a practical sense of humor that Kaelin found irresistible. For months, maybe even longer, Kaelin had admired Lyra from afar. Their few interactions had been pleasant, if a bit shy. "Here for your master's salves?" she would ask, smiling in a way that made Kaelin's heart stutter. They would exchange a few polite words. She might invite him to sit in the small garden behind her cottage while she fetched the herbal concoctions. Kaelin would watch her silhouette among the herbs and think of all the things he wanted to say if only he had the courage. Her presence reminded him that the world was wide, vibrant, full of experiences beyond musty tomes. One day, Lyra greeted him with unusual cheer. "Kaelin, you should join me at the harvest celebration next month," she said, offering him a small pouch of medicines. "It'll be at the village green, dancing, music, all that." He blinked, caught off guard. Yes, if Master Sedwin doesn't keep me locked in the library, I'd love to come." Her eyes sparkled mischievously. "You need to pry yourself away from that library sometimes. Life doesn't wait, you know." Her words lingered in his mind the entire walk back. He pictured the festival lights, the swirl of dancers under the stars, the music thrumming against the crisp autumn air. Without meaning to, his thoughts shifted to that alternate form he had begun to claim in secret. A fleeting idea crossed his mind. What if Kaylin attended as Kayla? The notion jolted him. It was unthinkable, too risky, and yet he couldn't fully bury the curiosity. An early clue about the amulet's origin emerged one twilight when Kaylin was searching for a new place to hide the trunk's garments. He doubted Master Sedwin would rummage in the corner room soon, but caution demanded more thorough concealment. Carefully, he lifted each item out, folding them in neat piles. At the bottom of the trunk lay a hidden compartment, a thin, false panel. Kaylin pried it open with a small knife. Inside, he found a rolled parchment sealed with a wax crest that resembled the crescent petal shape of the amulet itself. Curiosity aflame, Kaylin broke the seal. The parchment was fragile, but intact. After carefully unrolling it, he saw intricate lines of text accompanied by sketches of a younger woman wearing similar garments. One corner showed a rudimentary diagram of the moon petal amulet. Another was covered in swirling script that appeared to be an older dialect. Kaylin recognized pieces from his studies, references to shape-shifting attire and Lunari lineage, cryptic phrases about unlocking potential, and repeated mention of the word moon petal. It seemed to confirm that these garments were part of an ancient tradition or set of artifacts meant for transformations. Reading the entire document was challenging. Parts were smeared or written in archaic phrasing, but Kaylin gleaned enough to guess that these outfits were used in secret rites, possibly for someone who might inherit them as a birthright. Yet the parchment never stated clearly why one would need to shift shapes between male and female. Did it serve a ceremonial purpose, a personal one? The text was incomplete, forcing Kaylin to piece together hints from half-faded lines. He tucked the parchment away, vowing to decode more of it later. For now, he refolded the garments and moved the trunk to a more inconspicuous spot in the labyrinthine storage area. The following week, a wave of new books arrived from a far-off monastery, and Master Sedwin conscripted Kaylin to help sort them. By evening, Kaylin's eyes were cross-strained from scanning shelf after shelf. That night, the scholar locked himself in his laboratory to experiment with an old book that apparently contained pressed petals from some rare flower. Kaylin took the opportunity to retreat again into the storage rooms. Shutting the door behind him, he lit a lantern and settled next to the trunk. The parchment with the cryptic text lay carefully rolled inside. He unrolled it, determined to decipher more. Hours drifted by. Each time he thought he had a translation, another phrase contradicted the meaning. Still, the references to inner reflection and unseen halves ran throughout the text, and in the margins, a note. All transformations carry blessings and burdens. Fear neither side of the mirror. He studied the line, his brow furrowing. A sense of unease weighed on him, as though the script was cautioning him to be prepared for the consequences of inhabiting two different bodies. Before long, a new notion sprouted in his mind. He wanted to experience the world outside the manor in that transformed shape. Every nightly excursion so far had been limited to these musty corridors or the storage room's mirror. A restlessness kindled, spurred by an unexplainable urge to test the boundaries of what was possible. He had enough sense to know the risk was immense. If anyone recognized him, if Master Sedwin found out, or if worse, the spell misfired mid-journey, leaving him in a half-transformed state. But the longing persisted. Eventually, it became too large to ignore. The day of the harvest celebration arrived. The village brimmed with lively energy. Colorful banners decorated the streets, and fragrant food stalls lined the green. Children laughed as they chased each other around hay bales. Musicians tuned their fiddles, pipers tested their reeds, and soon the hum of music echoed through the valley. Kaelin told Master Sedwin he was going to collect the usual medicinal supplies and possibly attend the festival if there was extra time. Sedwin barely looked up from his deciphering table, absently granting permission with a dismissive wave. That was enough for Kaelin. He ducked into the stable, saddled the old mare, and rode into town, cloak pulled tight against the morning chill. Upon arriving, he dismounted near the smithy, greeted a few acquaintances, and quickly vanished into a quiet corner behind the tavern. There, with a knot of anticipation tightening in his chest, he removed a small bundle he had tied behind the saddle, one of the simpler enchanted dresses, and the moon petal amulet. He slipped inside a cramped storage shed behind the tavern, heart pounding. He prayed no one would come knocking for spare barrels while he was there. By lantern light, Kaelin changed into the garment, a dark green dress embroidered with shimmering silver threads along the hem. He placed the amulet around his neck, exhaled, and felt the by-now familiar rush of magic course through him. His body shifted gracefully, leaving him in that feminine form. The dress fit her perfectly. She steadied herself, breathing slowly. She draped a plain cloak over her shoulders to hide most of the shimmering fabric, lest it arouse suspicion, and carefully exited the shed, the amulet tucked safely under the neckline of the dress. Then, with heart hammering in her chest, she emerged onto the festival grounds. The feeling was exhilarating. Every sense seemed sharpened by the newness of this perspective. She weaved through the crowd, surrounded by music and laughter. Village folk bustled around, buying fresh produce, swirling in dance, and chatting with neighbors. She spotted a group of older women gossiping near a cider stand, noticed traveling merchants haggling over cloth and spices. No one paid her any special mind. It felt both thrilling and odd to move in this body among people who assumed she was a stranger, or perhaps someone visiting from out of town. She took in the swirl of color and noise, the tang of roasted chestnuts and sweet honey cakes in the air. Her steps slowed when she caught sight of the one person she couldn't resist looking for, Lyra. The village healer stood by a table filled with dried herbs and homemade teas, chatting amiably with a cluster of neighbors. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair pinned back in a low twist. From her vantage, Kaelin admired Lyra's warm expressions, how she leaned forward with genuine interest when someone spoke. Just seeing her made Kaelin's chest tighten with that familiar spark. Tentatively, Kaelin approached, hoping that in this new form she might have the courage to speak more freely. Lyra glanced up, offering a friendly smile out of habit. "Hello there, welcome to the harvest celebration. Would you like to try some herbal blends?" Her tone was inviting. Kaelin swallowed, forcing a steady voice. "Yes, I'd like that," she said. The pitch of her own voice surprised her, though it had done so every time she spoke as Kayla. "Do you have something for nerves?" she asked, her lips curling in a small, self-conscious smile. Lyra's eyes lit with recognition of a common request. "I do, actually. This mix is chamomile, lavender, and a pinch of lemon balm." She handed over a small sample in a paper twist. "Calms the mind and eases tension. Are you visiting the village?" Kaelin nodded. "Yes, for the festival." It wasn't a lie exactly, but it felt strange to stand so close to Lyra and pretend they had never met. Still, the subtle closeness felt comforting. Lyra asked, "What do you think of our little celebration so far? We're small, but we like to make it count." "It's wonderful. So lively." Kaelin tucked the herbal sample into a pocket. "Your name is Lyra, isn't it?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "It is. Have we met before? You look, or Well, perhaps not. I don't recall seeing you in the village. A surge of panic mingled with excitement. Kaylin mustered a gentle laugh. No, I don't think we've met before. Lyra shrugged off her confusion. In any case, I'm happy you stopped by. Enjoy the festival. If you need anything, bandages, ointments, or just a friendly ear, please find me. Her smile was warm as ever. Kaylin thanked her and drifted away, heart pounding. She couldn't deny a trace of sadness at the fact that Lyra didn't recognize her. But this fleeting encounter underlined just how drastically her appearance had changed. In Kayla's form, she could move through the crowd unseen, speak to Lyra without the awkwardness that sometimes stalled her words in her usual body. And yet, she longed to share some measure of truth with Lyra. The afternoon wore on, and Kaylin took in the festivities, jugglers tossing flaming torches, dancers spinning hand in hand to lively tunes, older villagers telling harvest-time stories to wide-eyed children. Occasionally, she would buy a small treat, a sweet pastry or a mug of cider, and wander around savoring the anonymity. It all felt magical, until she felt the faintest tug in her chest, a warning that the transformation might be waning. She had learned over the past weeks that the enchantment could last a good stretch, but it was always safest to revert before it failed on its own. Slipping away from the crowd, Kaylin made her way back to that same shed behind the tavern. Once inside, she removed the cloak, then carefully slipped the amulet over her head. A moment later, she was Kaylin again, a little off balance as he adjusted to the shift. He changed into his usual clothes, stowing the dress in his bundle. Satisfied that no one had observed him, he exited and rejoined the festival just as dusk was falling and lanterns were being lit around the green. He found Lyra again, now seated by a bonfire with other villagers. Summoning a deep breath, Kaylin walked over. "Evening, Lyra." She looked up, her face lighting in recognition. "Kaylin, you made it. I was worried you wouldn't come." He sat beside her on the rough wooden bench, feeling the warmth of the fire on his hands. "I'm glad I was able to. You look like you've been busy." Lyra let out a good-natured laugh. "Always. Though I had an odd moment earlier, I met a young woman who seemed to know me, perhaps just from hearing others talk, but there was this sense that she was familiar. Have you seen someone in a green dress?" Kaylin's heart lurched, but he kept his voice calm. "I've seen a lot of people in bright clothes. Must be someone from out of town." Lyra nodded slowly, studying the sparks floating into the night sky. "Yes, likely so." She shifted her gaze to him. "Anyway, I hope you'll dance tonight. The fiddlers are in fine form." "I might, if you'll join me," Kaylin offered, trying to steady the jitter in his voice. Lyra smiled, and a moment later, the music started up again. They stood with the other dancers, letting the lively rhythm guide them around in spinning circles, occasionally bumping shoulders with neighbors. Laughter resonated among them. Kaylin felt a rush of joy at dancing with her under the glow of lanterns, forgetting for a time the secrets swirling around him. They ended with breathless smiles, stepping aside to let another pair take the spot near the fiddlers. Kaylin swallowed, glancing at Lyra's lit face. He wondered if he would ever find the right words to reveal what he had discovered in that trunk. Probably not, he thought. Yet the longing remained, that sense of duality. He rode back to the manor under a sky shimmering with stars. By the time he arrived, the courtyard was empty, and the house was dark. This time, instead of feeling weighed down by secrets, Kaylin felt unexpectedly buoyant. He had ventured beyond the manor walls as Kayla, had spoken to Lyra in that shape, and returned safely. Despite the potential for disaster, the experience had felt strangely right. Yet not all nights could be so carefree. Soon afterward, Master Sedwin's rummaging led him to the corner storage room. Kaylin heard a sudden clatter from that direction and rushed there, only to find the scholar hunched over the open trunk, his aged face tight with perplexity. The trunk was nearly empty, its contents gone except for a scattering of old cloth, and that hidden compartment panel, still slightly ajar. "I was about to move these crates," Sedwin said, catching sight of Kaelin, "and I found this trunk. Most of the clothes are missing." He frowned, his gray brows knit. "I don't recall storing garments here." Kaelin felt his mouth go dry. "I didn't know it was here either, Master," he replied cautiously. His palms felt clammy. He had hidden the dresses elsewhere to keep them from being discovered, but he had left the trunk behind, hoping Sedwin wouldn't stumble upon it. Sedwin ran a hand over the trunk's interior. "This is old, older than anything I recall acquiring. But look," he pointed to a faint symbol etched into the wood, the same crescent petal design. "Strange. This motif feels familiar." Kaelin steadied himself. "Maybe it's related to something in the ancient volumes you keep in your private study," he offered. Sedwin pursed his lips, scanning the trunk's interior again. His demeanor was curious yet cautious. "Possibly. I'll have to cross-reference. Where could the contents have gone, though? Did we have a thief?" Kaelin forced a shrug, feigning ignorance. "I haven't heard of any break-ins." The old scholar narrowed his eyes. "All right. We'll keep an eye out. If you see or hear anything odd, you tell me." He moved away, leaving Kaelin alone in the corner room. Kaelin exhaled shakily. Too close. If Sedwin's curiosity led him to rummage deeper, it might unearth not just the garments, but the amulet, the parchment, and all the rest. Kaelin's nights of secret transformation might be exposed. Still, the risk only intensified his determination. Over the next few days, he redoubled his efforts to decode the parchment, driven by a sense that time was running short. He devoured every text in Sedwin's library that hinted at shape-changing spells or ancient female and male dualities, always mindful to leave no trace of his investigations. Gradually, he pieced together the narrative. The moon-petal amulet had once belonged to a lineage that believed in harnessing the power of shifting between two forms. Each article of clothing was enchanted to resonate with the amulet's energy. Whoever wielded them could walk two paths, though to what ultimate purpose, the parchments never explicitly said. It hinted that someone who used these garments would eventually be confronted with a choice: to hide from the truth, or to let it weave into every part of their life. That choice came pressing upon Kaelin sooner than he expected. One evening, Lyra appeared at the manor's doorstep unannounced. Kaelin had just finished tidying the kitchen when he heard her voice in the foyer. Rushing out, he found her speaking with one of the household staff, holding a small medical kit. "Lyra, is something wrong?" he asked, concerned. She turned to him, relief flickering over her expression. "Kaelin, thank goodness. I came because I heard Master Sedwin might be ill. A traveler passing through the village mentioned he saw your master, and he looked pale, complaining of chest pains. I wanted to check on him. Is he all right?" Kaelin felt his stomach clench with alarm. "I didn't know anything about that. He's been in his study all day. I'll take you to him." They made their way upstairs to the scholar's chamber. Master Sedwin was indeed sitting at his desk, looking drawn. He waved off Lyra's concern at first, but she insisted on examining him. To Kaelin's relief, it seemed to be a faint heart flutter caused by exhaustion, not a more dire condition. Lyra instructed him to rest, prescribing herbal tonics to strengthen his health. "If you take these regularly," she told Sedwin, setting down a small vial on the table, "and avoid overexerting yourself, you should improve." Sedwin nodded grudgingly, though his eyes flicked to Kaelin as though to say, "Don't you dare keep me from my research." Before leaving, Lyra asked to see Kaylin privately. They walked onto the manor's front porch, where the orchard was illuminated by dusk's purple haze. She sighed, pressing a hand to her temple. He's so stubborn, but hopefully he'll listen to reason. I couldn't help but notice the tension in the house. Are you doing all right? Kaylin tried to smile. I'm managing. Master Sedwin can be demanding, but I've found ways to cope. Lyra brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. That's good. You're strong. Anyone else would have gone crazy by now, cooped up in that library. She paused, glancing out at the orchard's silhouette. I've been thinking about the Harvest Festival, about dancing with you. It was a nice moment, wasn't it? I felt we connected. A gentle warmth spread through Kaylin at her words. I'm glad you asked me to dance. It was a good memory. She nodded, an uncertain smile pulling at her lips. Then she blurted, This might sound odd, but did you notice a woman wearing a green dress that day? I remember speaking with her. She seemed like she knew me somehow. I can't get it out of my mind. Kaylin's throat went dry. He scrambled for a response. Well, a lot of people were passing through. It could have been anyone. Lyra exhaled, her eyes searching Kaylin's face. I suppose so. Still, it's strange. She let the matter drop, though a subtle tension remained in her posture. Anyway, thank you for letting me check on your master. I should be heading back before it's fully dark. Kaylin walked her to the door, mind spinning. As she said goodbye and left, he realized that lying to her felt terrible. He was used to concealing secrets from Master Sedwin, but hiding from Lyra weighed on him in a different way. 2 days later, Kaylin discovered a new garment in a different part of the mansion, a pale lavender cloak embroidered with shimmering leaves. It was tucked behind a shelf in a disused study, almost as if someone had hidden it there centuries ago. Thrilled yet mystified, he rushed it back to his private storage spot. The style matched the trunk's pieces perfectly, meaning it too would resonate with the amulet and trigger that same magical shift. He wondered if more garments were scattered around the house, each left behind for some reason lost to time. Perhaps that explained the trunk's partial contents. It was never complete. Something bigger was at play, some hidden puzzle about the legacy of the moon petal magic. Every discovery added to Kaylin's fascination, until everything abruptly unraveled. Late one night, Kaylin had transformed into Kayla, wearing that new lavender cloak while studying the parchment by lantern light. She had grown comfortable slipping down to the large foyer and even the library's side passages, assuming the household staff would be asleep. Yet as she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with Master Sedwin, who was hobbling from his study toward the kitchen in search of tea. Startled gasps escaped them both. Kayla froze, mind blank with terror. The lavender cloak shimmered under the lanterns. Master Sedwin's eyes widened as he took in her form. He recognized the cloak. He recognized the magic. "What? Who are you?" he stammered, voice rough. He fumbled for his own lantern, raising its glow to see better. Kayla backed away. Her plan to flee was thwarted when her cloak caught on a side table, nearly toppling it. She realized she had no easy escape. Master Sedwin's free hand gestured a shaky warding motion, as though expecting to be attacked by a rogue mage. In a shaky voice, Kayla whispered, "It's me, Kaylin." Sedwin's brow furrowed. "That's impossible," he began. But then his eyes fell to the amulet glinting at her throat. His expression contorted with shock. "The trunk, the garments, that symbol. You stole them. You used them." Kayla's lips trembled. "I found them. I had to know what they did." A tense silence filled the corridor, broken only by the crackle of Sedwin's lantern flame. At last, The old scholar swallowed. Turn back. Let me see it, if this is real. Hands shaking, Kayla fumbled with the amulet, slipping it off. The transformation receded instantly, leaving Kaylin standing there, clothed awkwardly in the cloak that no longer fit him perfectly. Master Sedwin's face was a picture of astonishment, dismay, and perhaps a flicker of fascination. Kaylin began to explain everything, how he discovered the trunk, the transformations, the parchment referencing the moon petal lineage, the hidden garments scattered around the house. All of it spilled out in a rush of pent-up confession. Master Sedwin listened, brows drawn. When Kaylin finished, he let out a long breath. I suspected that trunk was something unusual, but I had no idea it contained such potent magic. You must realize the risk you took, meddling with spells you scarcely understand. I do, Kaylin admitted, but it was hard to resist. Sedwin closed his eyes, pressing a palm to his temple. I've studied many artifacts, but shape-altering garments? This is beyond my immediate comprehension. Let me see the parchment you mentioned. Unease swirled in Kaylin's stomach, but there was no use denying him. They went together to retrieve the parchment, then settled in Sedwin's study, the hour creeping closer to dawn as the old scholar pored over the fragile script. It's an archaic dialect referencing a tradition that's borderline myth, Sedwin murmured. These garments might be from a family line that believed in bridging some kind of dual nature, but I can't glean the full context. The language is half poetic, half coded. If you were truly meant to inherit this, perhaps that's why the transformation resonates with you so strongly. Kaylin rubbed his arms, still jittery from being caught. What happens now? Sedwin exhaled heavily. I can't ignore what you've done. My first instinct is to confiscate those garments and keep you from using them until I understand this better. But I see the fervor in your eyes. Maybe this is indeed your path. Let's not be hasty. He set the parchment aside, exhaustion tugging at his eyes. I'll need a few days to think on this. For now, do not leave the manor in that shape, and do not parade around the household either. And for pity's sake, don't reveal this to anyone else, unless you're prepared for the consequences. Kaylin nodded, a storm of relief and tension swirling. At least Master Sedwin didn't threaten to banish him or destroy the garments. Still, the scholar's wariness was clear. Thank you, Kaylin whispered. I won't be reckless. Sedwin gave a final silent nod. Despite that uneasy truce, secrets are not easily contained. Within days, rumors began circulating among the small group of staff who kept the mansion running. Faint accounts of a mysterious woman wandering the corridors at night, sightings of glowing silver threads in the gloom. Whispers found their way to Lyra in the village, who heard them while treating one of the manor's housekeepers for a mild fever. Concerned and remembering her odd encounter at the harvest festival, Lyra came back to the manor unannounced late one afternoon. The staff let her in politely, suspecting she was there for Master Sedwin's care. Instead, she asked for Kaylin. By chance, he was in the orchard, searching for herbs. She met him among the rows of old trees bearing ripe pears. A warm breeze rustled the leaves as they stood face to face. You look unsettled, Kaylin began, noticing the worry etched in her features. Lyra hesitated. There are stories going around, she said quietly. People claim a strange woman roams this house after dark, wearing clothes that shimmer with an otherworldly light. I know it sounds bizarre, but I keep thinking back to that festival day and how something seemed off. Then I recall my conversation with you about illusions and magic. Kaylin. She searched his face. Is there something you're not telling me? He swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. He could lie, but looking into her earnest eyes made that feel impossible. Finally, he murmured, It's complicated. I found an artifact, something that can change my appearance. Her eyes widened, realization dawning. So you... Wait, that woman in green, that was you? He nodded slowly, cheeks burning. A flurry of emotions crossed her face. Confusion, surprise, a hint of betrayal that she had been left in the dark. I'm sorry, he said hurriedly. I never meant to deceive you, but it's not just a simple disguise. This magic actually transforms me. I become someone else, still me, but... He faltered, struggling for the right words. Lyra stared for a moment, her thoughts racing. At last, she said quietly, You danced with me as yourself, and you spoke to me in that other shape. Why? Kaelin exhaled, shoulders drooping. Because I... He paused, pressing a hand against a gnarled trunk for balance. Because I wanted to see if I had the courage to approach you in a form where I felt less exposed, less shy. But it wasn't fair to you. The orchard fell silent, except for the gentle rustle of leaves. When Lyra finally spoke, her voice had softened. You are my friend. If you'd told me, I wouldn't have judged you. I'm not sure I fully understand, but I don't think it's wrong to want to explore parts of yourself that are hidden. It does hurt a little to realize you couldn't trust me with it, but I can see why you'd be afraid. He lowered his gaze. I wanted to tell you. I just didn't know how. For a moment they stood there, the orchard's golden late afternoon light casting long shadows. At last, Lyra took a step closer, her voice gentle. Let me see. Show me. If this is something real, something you can do, I want to see with my own eyes. That way, maybe I'll believe it. He felt a spark of panic. Now? Right here? She glanced around. Why not? The orchard is empty. We're alone. Heart pounding, Kaelin removed the amulet from his pocket, the silver chain clinking softly. He slipped it over his head, then retrieved a small silken sash from under his cloak, the simplest enchanted garment he had found. He hesitated only briefly before wrapping the sash around his waist. The orchard air seemed to vibrate as the magic flared. Lyra gasped, stepping back as the transformation unfolded before her. In seconds, Kaelin stood with a feminine shape, hair shifting to that longer, shinier style, face softening into those unfamiliar yet recognizable features. Lyra's mouth hung open, her eyes wide. She reached out, almost touching Kayla's arm before withdrawing, unsure. Eventually, she brushed trembling fingertips across Kayla's cheek. This is by the stars. 1,000 questions burned in her gaze. Does it hurt? Are you all right? Kayla shook her head. It's not painful, just strange. At first it was frightening, but now it feels... She trailed off, recalling the instructions not to use certain words, so she simply said, It feels different, but I'm still me. Lyra studied Kayla carefully, absorbing every detail, from the subtle angles of her face to the way the orchard light caught in her hair. Slowly, a small smile touched Lyra's lips. I can see your mannerisms. It's like you, but in another mirror. A shaky laugh escaped Kayla. Relief coursed through her that Lyra wasn't recoiling in horror. They stood silently for a few moments, letting the orchard's tranquility envelop them. Then, hesitantly, Kayla explained more, how she had found the clothes, the amulet, the half-deciphered parchment. Lyra listened intently, occasionally asking questions or interjecting a thoughtful hum. You've carried this secret alone for so long, Lyra murmured. She looked genuinely concerned for the weight Kayla, had borne. What do you plan to do now that Master Sedwin knows? And with rumors spreading, you might not be able to stay hidden forever. I'm not sure, Kayla admitted. I've realized I can't keep sneaking around like a thief in my own home. Master Sedwin is still deciding how to handle it, but I feel drawn to keep exploring the truth behind these garments, behind the amulet. It's as if it's calling me. I can't explain it better than that." Lyra nodded, her voice softening further. "If this is important to you, then perhaps you need to see it through no matter how complicated it becomes. But please promise me you'll be careful." She brushed Kayla's hair aside gently. "Magic like this isn't something you can just ignore once it's awakened." "I know." Kayla felt a wave of gratitude, as though a heavy stone had shifted off her chest. Without overthinking, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against Lyra's. They stayed like that for a moment, breathing the orchard's sweet air. There was no grand gesture of romance, only a quiet closeness that echoed the depth of feeling between them. Eventually, Kayla stepped back. "I should revert. Someone might see," she said, though a part of her didn't want to. Gently, she removed the sash and unclasped the amulet, letting the transformation fade. Kaylin stood there once more. Lyra watched in silent wonder. "I'll keep your secret," she said softly, glancing around to ensure no one had witnessed the enchantment. "But please, let me help you in whatever way I can." Kaylin's eyes glistened with gratitude. "Thank you. More than I can say." From that day onward, Kaylin wasn't entirely alone in his explorations. Lyra stayed discreet, visiting the manor from time to time under the guise of checking on Sedwin or delivering herbs. In hushed moments, she and Kaylin would talk about the trunk, the scattered garments, and whether there might be a deeper reason for the enchantment. Lyra's empathy tempered Kaylin's fear of discovery, even as Master Sedwin's wariness lingered. Sedwin continued studying the parchment, poring over each cryptic line. Late one evening, he summoned Kaylin to his study. The old man seemed both tired and resolute, as though he'd come to a conclusion. "I've found references to a more complete codex, rumored to be housed in a private collection in another city," he said, tapping the parchment. "If it still exists, it might explain the purpose of these transformations and guide you properly. We can't rely on half an old script to tell us how to handle this. We need the full story. I propose we go in search of it." Kaylin's eyes widened. "You want to leave the manor?" Sedwin gave a wry half-smile. "Don't look so shocked. I left it plenty in my younger days. If these garments have chosen you, then let's unravel this puzzle in earnest. It may be the biggest breakthrough of my career, but let's be clear, you must exercise caution. We don't know what dangers might arise. People fear what they don't understand." Kaylin nodded slowly, that flutter of excitement and trepidation mingling in his core. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, voice earnest. Sedwin sighed, his stern facade softening slightly. "Then prepare to travel in a week's time. We'll likely be gone for several weeks, maybe more. I'll send word to the city's archivists to expect us." The night before they left, Kaylin walked the manor halls in quiet reflection. Memories of the past months played in his mind. Discovering the trunk, the initial jolt of seeing his reflection as Kayla, dancing at the harvest festival, nearly being caught countless times, and finally, revealing the truth to both Sedwin and Lyra. By a dim, flickering sconce, Kaylin paused, gently touching the moon petal amulet hidden under his shirt. For all the fear and uncertainty this magic had caused, it had also opened a door he never realized existed. That door would lead him far beyond the familiar borders of the manor, into a wider realm of unexplored mysteries. And perhaps, if Lyra's kindness was any indication, deeper connections awaited him than he had ever dared hope. He let out a slow breath, his heartbeat a steady drum of anticipation. Come morning, he and Master Sedwin would ride out, trunk in tow, searching for the missing pieces of a legacy that spanned centuries. He didn't know what revelations they would uncover or how his life might change, but he felt ready, more ready than ever before, to walk forward with open eyes and an open heart. So he climbed the winding staircase to his room, footsteps echoing on cold stone, leaving the moonlit halls behind. In his chamber, with starlight filtering through the tall window, Kalen closed his eyes. He removed the amulet, held it for a moment, and then carefully packed it into a leather pouch, along with the garments he had gathered. Tomorrow his journey would begin in earnest, guided by the ethereal glow of the moon petal magic and the promise that somewhere, beyond the horizon, the answers to its riddle awaited. He slept deeply that night, dreamless and calm, feeling as though he had finally taken the first unsteady steps on a path that was, for all its risks, uniquely his to tread.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.